Easton, your voice is so smooth.
It's creamy like butter in a microwave.
Melting as the heat evaporates the very substance of it.
I'm melting the air.
And welcome back to the Audacious podcast, the show where we encourage people to think differently and live differently. I'm Talon Bowman, your host of the show, and we are finally back. I was planning a little bit of a break, but unfortunately that break extended a little bit longer than I was anticipating. But we are back in the studio. We have a great episode for you today, as we're going to be talking about how to cherish every moment of our life, why it's important to be present in every moment, and how to appreciate the small things. Today, I'm joined by two amazing guests. I am joined by Abella Edwards.
Hello.
Hello. It's great to have you here. I'm also joined by Easton Edora.
Howdy.
How are you today?
I am great.
Good. And before we do dive into the material of today's episode, I do want to introduce the two of you a bit better so that the viewers can get to know you a bit more and you're more than just a name on the screen. So Easton, if you would, tell us your hometown, your current major, and your favorite memory from middle school.
Oh, okay. All right. So hometown, I am from Lexington, South Carolina. I am a psychology major with a Christian studies minor. Favorite memory from middle school, I would have to say reading Lord of the Rings in a week.
In a week?
The entire series, yes. That was the last time I read it, but...
The last time? First time and the last time, or?
Yes, that too.
Very cool. In a week, I could never.
In a week, yes.
How many hours a day of reading was that?
Oh, at least 10. It was the summer. We had no school. I was homeschooled, so and it was middle school, so.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, Easton, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
And Abella, how about you? What is your hometown, your major, and your favorite memory from high school?
Oh, goodness. So I am from Inman, South Carolina. I'm an interior design major. And my favorite memory from high school was speech and debate tournament, December 2022. Speech and debate was kind of my life, my sport, if you will, all 4 years of high school. And I won first place in both extemporaneous speaking and impromptu speaking. Those were my two primary events. And it was just a really cool moment of celebration, kind of the progress that I had made in my ability to communicate, and had made some really sweet friends on our team and on the other team. So it was just a really cool moment to celebrate with everyone and my coaches.
That is absolutely amazing. I cannot brag on that level.
I'm intimidated.
Oh, man.
You're great.
I'll never debate her ever again. Anyways, no, I do have one more question left for the both of you. It's a staple question of the podcast, an icebreaker I ask every single guest I have. And so, Easton, we'll turn it back to you. Go ahead and tell us what your hottest take is.
Flip-flops and socks.
Nope.
Any weather. It's great. If the socks get wet, you just take them off and you got flip-flops.
But then you got soggy socks.
That's true, but...
What are you going to do with those? Are you just going to hold on to them in your hand?
Or you just wear them. I mean, hey. And if you walk in, it's so great.
Easton is psychopath confirmed.
Come on, you got to die to self.
Hey, yo, how does... Okay, first of all, you have that little plastic line that is supposed to go in the gap between your big toe and your second toe.
Right. And
having a sock prevents that from entering the gap, and it just feels so weird. Mm-hmm. So why is that better?
Well, once it stretches enough, like once the sock conforms to the shape of your four toes on one side and then your big toe on the other side, then it just fits, And
So how long does that take?
You just don't think about it.
No, I'm thinking about it because I'm thinking about how wrong this take is.
I haven't kept track of when I stopped thinking about it.
Right.
But it's great.
What are your thoughts on that, Abella?
Oh, my goodness. I don't think I have actually ever attempted that combination, but I might have to now. I'm curious.
I've tried it. I
And-
definitely have. It just doesn't work.
I've heard it's an Asian thing.
Is it?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
I haven't met anyone else who does it.
Well, you know what? That is a very hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Thank you.
That's way up there. I don't know how you're going to top that, Abella, but what's your hot take?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So my hot take is that Sweet Life Productions is the top film production company of our generation.
I actually.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
how could you?
I'm sorry. It's a hot take.
How
You
could
asked.
you?
You asked.
I know. But that hurts. That hurts deep to the core. Because Sweet Life has been the rival of both Anderson University 48-hour film fests that I've participated in.
And I do know that last year you won, but they're currently the reigning champions. So I think we have a clear.
No, I think it's a score of 1-1. That's not a champion. That's a tie. That's a tie, Bella.
That's a tie.
Well, I guess we'll see. 48-hour film fest 2024.
I guess we will.
Who will win?
I guess we will. But why are they objectively the best?
Well, you have a core group of actors. What, 5 or 6 guys we have on campus, and we have that consistency, you know? And I feel that their personalities and antics in real life are translated quite well into their films, and being part of that group or in close proximity with them a good deal of the time, it's almost endearing, and I will have to watch more of your films, though, for sure, to have an equal comparison, but at the present moment, that is my opinion.
I got you. See, I would agree they're a very good film group, but I feel like one of the things that it doesn't have going for it is unfortunately Josh Acree's part of it. Like, that's a bummer.
Maybe that's a topic for another time.
See, she's a little
I'm a
biased.
little biased.
Yeah, she's
A
a little
little
biased.
bit. A little bit.
I'm a little biased towards yours because I was actually part of one of your
Thank
films.
you. Yes.
So,
If you haven't checked it out yet, on my link tree, you can find it through the Audacious podcast Instagram, I believe. But it's Talon SB Photography on Instagram. Through my link tree, there will be a short film called Go Bananas, where my main man Easton starred in, and he has such a beautiful character in the movie. And he really just lets his acting skills just shine through. It was truly spectacular.
glorious British voice.
No, that's so good. But obviously, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which one of us is better. We're both still having fun making the films. And
Oh, yeah.
as stressful as the 48-hour film festival can be, it's my favorite event that AU does, just because it's so fun to see how much we can create in that 48 hours, see how high quality the films can be, see where we can go, what crazy ideas we can come up with and roll with. I mean, that's what we did for 10 to 12. We just started out with the base idea, and we're like, how far can we push this? How much can we just roll off of this momentum? And it's so much fun. I think a lot of it is you can let the stress get to you, and then the 48-hour film festival wouldn't be fun, because all of a sudden you're fixating on making it perfect, on making sure you have every single thing that you envisioned. Or you could choose to be flexible. You could choose to not be so tight with what you're expecting of your product and enjoy the process. Enjoy filming the scenes, enjoy capturing the moments, enjoy the editing process.
Cherish those small moments.
Yes, cherishing every detail, which segues perfectly into what we're talking about today, which is why it's so important and so beneficial for us to enjoy life rather than being caught up in what isn't right and what isn't going the way that we want things to. So I want to open up with one verse. I have it written down, thankfully. Ecclesiastes 8:15. So Ecclesiastes in the Bible is a book all about what has meaning in life, what is meaningful. And one of the most famous quotes from it is, meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. The writer is just going through this phase where he's realizing nothing is new under the sun, that everything on earth is meaningless. But at the end of that, he repeats this over and over, that it is to our benefit to enjoy the life that God has given us. So in Ecclesiastes 8:15, he says, "And I commend joy, for man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun." And so we see in this verse that it's good for us to enjoy life, that it's good for us to eat and drink and be joyful. And it's it's just a natural way of living and responding with gratitude to what God has given us. But so often we can be caught up in what isn't going right in our life, what isn't going as the way that we expected things to go, what is hard, what is difficult. And so often we can forfeit joy because we're so fixated on what's in front of us that we can see that is not right and that is not completely whole in the way that we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to open up with this question. For the two of y'all, what are the biggest ways that you have found that helps you remind yourself to enjoy this life that you have, to enjoy it to the fullest?
Mm-hmm. You want me to go ahead? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So the thing I thought of when you said, enjoy life, enjoy the small things, really that I think something that is pivotal and vital to enjoying and cherishing those small things is enjoying first the greatest thing, which is the Lord. There's a verse that came to mind. I think it's in Psalm 34, and it goes, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." And I think that's we can take that one of two ways. Firstly, the things I want in life, I can justify that by my relationship with God and say, okay, things are going really well, and all of a sudden I really want this thing. So that must mean that the Lord has given me that desire. Or you could take it, the Lord is the thing I find the most joy in. Like, He's so good. And all these things, all these little things are pointing me to Him, right? And I'm finding a new level of love for Him in all the ways that He provides, in all the ways that He is teaching me each day, and in all the ways that He's sustaining me even as I stumble.
Yeah, the good that He is evident in all that He gives us, but is also reflected in all of His creation. Yeah. That's good. How about you, Abella?
I would have to start with another verse from the book of Psalms 90:14, and it says, "Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days." So I think I'd have to agree with you, Easton. It really begins with saturating yourself with Scripture in order to be able to gravitate and turn your face and your mind towards the fact and the understanding of God's abundant love that He has poured out on you. And my mom always says that God's love covers us like a blanket. And I think that once we're able to fully accept that and embrace that kind of love from God, a blanket is something that's comforting, and we feel like we can tackle the daily challenges of life when we have kind of our security blanket almost, which is like God's love. And I think especially since I have started college, I've realized that saturation, especially in the morning, starting your day with that, is what leads to a life of joy, because you are constantly reminding yourself and opening your soul and heart to accepting reminders of God's love for you and for those around you. And I think one of my favorite ways that comes, the forms that comes in, is in nature. Actually, say 2 years ago, I wrote a research paper on how cottagecore is the antidote to our societal shift of a sort of depressive state, a loss of joy. And I mean, obviously, if you're not familiar with that term, a major part of it is nature and God's creation. And there have, of course, been several studies on why that is productive and beneficial to cultivating a state of happiness for humans. But we can be reminded through God's creation of that abundant blanket kind of love in the details. So that's far off tangent rabbit hole I went on. But yes, that's what I would have to answer that question.
No, that's so good. Spending time in nature gives us joy because we're interacting with God's creation, what He's put on the earth for us to dwell in and to take care of. We have the responsibility of taking care of the earth that God has placed us on. That's so good. And that actually ties directly into something that I was thinking of beforehand, before recording this podcast, is something that I call the 3 C's of cherishing every moment. So it's creation, like you were talking about, nature, community, and creativity. First of all, creation, because God is evident in all his creation, and his character is reflected in everything we see. There's just something so beautiful about seeing landscapes, seeing all of these sprawling savannas, the deserts, just all the biomes that God has created. There's a beauty there that is not reflected in man-made structures the same way. Just being able to see that and live in that moment is so good. And that's why people say, if you're not feeling joyful, if you're feeling in a funk, just go for a walk, spend time in nature, because it is healing. And then the second one, community, because God has created us for community. When we surround ourselves with people who are close to God and are doing their best to draw closer to him, not only will they continue to do that in their life, but they'll help us draw closer to him as well, and we'll help them draw closer to God. And the more that we draw closer to God, the more that his joy is our strength. The joy of the Lord is our strength. So being able to cherish every moment, it really helps in community, being able to build those relationships, build those memories. And then the third C, creativity, is one that I'm personally passionate about, because I feel like a lot of people forget it, especially in today's age. But we were made to be creative. Just in the way that God is creative when he created the earth and the universe and everything in it, how everything works perfectly in a system that just repeats. We're also creative. He has made us to have an imagination. He's made us to be creative with music, with architecture, with all of these things.
Yeah.
And there's joy to be found in being creative. More and more, that joy is being lost because that desire to be creative is becoming less and less. I think we see that especially in the eruption of AI. And AI-generated images, AI-generated text, just the sense that man itself has created a tool that creates for us. And while that is beneficial in many areas, if we depend too much on that, then we're going to start losing our creativity ourselves. It's also evident in the way that we consume media. You just go to a movie and the story is completely portrayed out for you, every single detail. And that's not a bad thing. We're able to enjoy that. But there's a way that when you're reading a book, your imagination takes control, and you're able to find joy in your own creative envisioning of the story, the pieces of the story that someone has written down.
Yeah.
So,
and we can. I'd like to add to that, because
go ahead.
Like the way we've merged from a creative industry where people were writing poetry and writing, and now it's an age of consumerism. And rather than cherishing things and saying I'm going to treasure this, it's consuming it and I need this to satisfy. And that's why we have addictions to social media. We have addictions. C.S. Lewis combated this. The idea that the Romantics had was chasing that feeling of almost like a heaven on earth. When they were there are certain Romantic writers that the authors aren't coming to mind, but his premise was we can't be chasing those things because they're not the ends in themselves. So when you ask, how do we remind ourselves to cherish the small things, ultimately seeing their significance in the light of who they point to.
Yeah, consumerism, not only in the sense that we're continuing to consume like an addiction, but it's consume in an endless cycle. We consume, and rather than dwell on what we've just consumed and cherish that, we're instantly onto the next thing, the next movie, the next TV show, the next episode. We're barely giving ourselves any time to breathe.
Right.
And at the root of it, that's unhealthy. That is unhealthy because we're not giving our minds the space to not only process what we've seen or envisioned or enjoyed consuming, but we're not meant to endlessly consume. That's not our nature. As God pours into us, we are also meant to pour out into others.
Right, and we are created in God's image, and He is the divine creator. So that little piece of Him is something that we have in all of us. And it's part of a creation mandate for us to produce. And we have increasingly become more lazy, creatively speaking. Even today in Art 106, we were talking about plagiarism and stealing other people's art, even if it's not the 100% what makes up your composition. just the mental laziness of it all, when we are fully capable of creating something original, it just becomes more of a putting something out there and a deadline sort of situation, instead of having the time and intentionality to have a healthy creative process, however long it may need to be.
Yeah, I like that. It's such a hot topic today. It's just that art theft, especially digital art theft with AI generation. Something I realized, and I was doing this because I was looking up different wallpapers for like my PC, of course.
Yeah.
And when I was looking up the wallpapers, something that I noticed is that like half the results were instantly like the first words of the image were AI generated this wallpaper, this image.
This has all evolved within the last 6 months.
Yeah,
I've noticed it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And on the surface, you wouldn't think much of it. Like on the surface, it looks the same. On the surface, it's the same theme of art. It looks beautiful. It looks nice. But for me, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, nope, instantly skipping over that. And I pondered and I sat there and I'm like, why is that? Why am I so against it? And I think it's because with AI generated art, it's everything that it's pulling off the internet just mishmashed into one image. So you're not able to see the reflection of someone's character through that. You're not able to see the effort and the hours that someone poured into drawing that or making that art.
You're not able to cherish it.
Yes, you're not able to cherish it because it's just instant. It just procedurally generates and there's no effort behind it. And so for me, part of the beauty in art, in creation, is sitting there and knowing that someone made it, knowing that it reflects the character of someone, and that they put hard work into it. That almost helps me cherish it more.
Although the biggest problem I have with AI is its inconsistency with details. Like you could ask it to do a forest, and you look, and like there's just trees that are in the distance, but they're like in front of the ones. Like it's just they merge, and it's almost deceiving.
Yeah, you're so right. Is that you're not able to cherish the art that it produces and what it produces in general. That's so good.
Yeah, we have a quantity over quality culture right now.
Yeah. All right. So thinking on that, part of cherishing the life that God has given us in the moments that we're in is being able to sit in them and take them in and not being distant in the moment. Even though you're in the moment, you're just absent or distant. And what I mean by that is too oftentimes we let our joy be stolen by fixating on the past or the future. You know, if you're fixating on the future, like we do today, it's almost like everybody's anticipating the next big thing, the next big release. And as soon as that comes, we then start anticipating the next big release rather than being able to enjoy what just came out. It's like, oh, now that that's out, I'm so looking forward to the sequel. Or I'm so forward looking at season 2. Like, oh, how are they going to finish it? It's like how they hook you in. And then you have fixating on the past, because a lot of times people can get caught up in what they didn't do in the past. They'll rethink conversations, events through the mind, and they'll get so caught up in that they just fixate on it, and they're missing out on the present. And in both situations, you're still in the present. You're still in the present. You're going through every single event that you have in the day. But why does fixating on the past or fixating on the future steal the joy that you could have in the moment that you're in?
Yep. So actually something that my parents have always said when I've had that tendency of focusing on or living in the past, it's like painting pictures of Egypt. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that phrase, but it's a reflection of Exodus. So in the Bible, we see once God has freed the Israelites, at some point while they're in the wilderness, they start thinking about, oh, we had it so much better in Egypt. And even though we were slaves, we still had this form of consistency or whatever it is. And I think oftentimes we paint these inaccurate views of what our past was like, especially the times where it really was difficult or unhealthy for us. And God has now brought us through that, but the devil can speak lies into our minds in making us believe that the place that God delivered us from was so much better, because it may have been more comfortable or easier for us, but what is life without growth?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my mind always goes to, is painting pictures of Egypt.
I've been listening to the Pentateuch recently. So I've been wandering the wilderness with the people of Israel, and like they just have complaints. Every chapter, we don't have bread, we don't have water, we don't have meat.
Yeah.
And we had all these things in Israel, in Egypt, and like you were saying, they're painting pictures of a land that God saved them from. And I think we have the same tendency, is to paint pictures of like what it would be like if we just had this one thing. Like, why don't God has led us away from it? Like, why has He led us here to die?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I look at their situation and I'm like, guys, you had nothing to be anxious about. All your needs were taken care of. Your clothes never worn out. You knew where to go, when to go, and what to do in any situation. And all you had to do was be faithful, even with those seemingly little things. And yeah, like they fixated on the past in that way of remembering what they left behind rather than what they were saved from.
Almost reminds you of Lot's wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a fact that in every moment of our lives, there's a war going on between the good that's in our life, the things that we are able to be grateful for, but then also the difficulty of our life. Both are constant facts about our life, no matter what season we're in. Because we live in a fallen world, there is always going to be brokenness in our blessings. The blessings might not be affected by the brokenness, but the existence of both is always going to be at the same time in every season of our life. And the crazy thing there is your life can be so radically different depending on which you focus on. It's all about where your focus goes. Where your mind is, where your attention is what you're going to focus on. It's going to help you be present. It's going to help you enjoy life. Take the Israelites. They were in the wilderness. They were going through the desert, and they were being led out of Egypt into a new land. And yes, it was great because they were being led out of slavery, but in many cases it was also hard because many times they didn't know where they were going, and just the wilderness can be very harsh at times. In that, they could either focus on the difficulties and the trials of the wilderness and everything they don't have, or they could focus on the blessings that they are able to be free in this current time, that they are being led to something that the Lord has promised, the blessings of the miracles He's already done by parting the Red Sea, by providing manna, all of these things. You can choose where your focus is. And that's the crazy part. All of us have the tendency to want to focus on the negative, because it's easier. I think it's easier to see what we don't have rather than the blessing what we do have. Because after enough time of what we do have, it's almost like we grow accustomed to it. It's almost like that's the new normal. And we forget how rough things were in the past, such as the Israelites with Egypt. But your focus defines your joy. It really does. You can focus on what's wrong in life. And yes, that's true. But it's not going to bring you happiness. It's not going to bring you joy. It's not going to ground you in the present. And so you can focus on what is good, the blessings that God has provided, the ways that He's come and helped you time and time again. And while the brokenness might still be a fact, you just accept that and you focus on the blessings. Yeah. It really is easy to talk about this over the mics, but practically it's hard to put this into effect. So for the two of you, what are some practical ways that you have employed that have helped you stay present in every moment to be able to cherish the blessings that God gives you here and now?
So for me, one thing that has worked for me is to just shake that state of mind out. And the way I see it, it's like fantasizing. It's like when I'm thinking about the future, when I'm thinking about a hard conversation or reminiscing on how another past conversation might have gone better. Have the image of I'm pulling this out and I'm putting it down. And I'm not going to pick it up because it doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
My focus doesn't belong with that memory. And the truth is, it's every behavior problem comes from some sort of heart issue. 9 times out of 10, unless it's medical, unless it's psychological. And for me, like one of my greatest heart issues is loneliness, and I've recently had to like deal with that. And so my fear of being alone, my own remedy for that was, okay, I'm not going to be alone by remembering the interactions that I had with other people, or just if I can't immerse myself in people, then in community, then I'm going to go there in a headspace. And like I'd forget, like praying is being in the presence of the Lord. And I would forget, and that's a theme that you see for the people of Israel. It's like they forgot the ways that the Lord had blessed them with food, with clothing, but also he had saved every single one of them from slavery and bondage to the things that they called out to him for. I know I said my favorite memory from middle school was reading Lord of the Rings, but really my favorite memory, I think, was that moment when I put down the fear of loneliness and I said, okay, people aren't going to define me anymore. I'm going to chase after you. And like calling out to him and saying, save me from this bondage. And so from there, I've forgotten, but the Lord has been gracious in like helping me remember and cherish the ways that he has, all the blessings that he has given me as I've walked the wilderness.
Yeah. I love how you're pointing that out, because everything in life is a harmony. It's true that fixating on the past or stressing and worrying about the future will steal our joy. But there is a level to where we do want to remember the past, remember what the Lord has done for us, and also plan for the future, plan for what not only our plan is, but ask the Lord what his plan is and that he show it to us. So there is some healthy balance that we can have in remembering the past, planning for the future, but still being present in life. But once you remember the past almost too much, once you fixate on it and then think, well, Lord, you moved all the way back then, why am I not seeing you move right now? That steals joy, because we are using our personal experience and almost projecting that on God, projecting that on him to say, why aren't you fitting the mold of how I understand you? But we'll never truly be able to understand God. And then planning for the future, it's good to plan, but if we stress too much about what might go wrong with our plan, or if things might not go exactly the way we envision it, then that's also going to steal away our joy, because we are too present in the future to not be present now, here in the moment, to enjoy every single moment the Lord has given us. I mean, Jesus even says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And I've heard that a lot of times, but only recently have I felt like that true message is sinking in the sense of, man, I just have to worry about today. Like, and that's not worry about it in a bad way. Like, I get to enjoy every moment of today because it's the day the Lord has given us. I don't know if there's going to be tomorrow. Jesus might come back before then. But today is a gift from the Lord. And so I get to enjoy every single moment from it and just remind myself to pray for the Lord to be present in every moment as I'm also present.
Yeah, in going off of that, there's a passage in James that talks about how we don't even need to say, oh, when this happens in the future, or when I planned this, when this occurs. In fact, it discourages against that and says, if the Lord wills it. We don't even need to worry about that.
Yeah.
The Lord is releasing us from those bonds.
Yeah.
Being worried is the fear that God is going to fail, and God is not capable of failing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Luke 12, Jesus is speaking on the same thing. He says, consider the ravens, they neither sow nor reap, they have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And that, think about it. Like, are you ever wrong in your daydreaming? That's something someone asked me once, and I thought about it. Like when I'm imagining how a conversation should go, like I'm never considering, well, it never actually turns out that way. And the fact is, it's not reality.
Yeah.
The past is not the present moment, and the future is not the present moment. And so worrying doesn't change any of those things.
that's a really hard question to grapple with, is practically, how do we stay grounded in reality? And I think that ties into as well being present in every moment, because when you're present, fully present, you're grounded in reality. So, Abella, I don't think you've answered that yet, but if you have any practical ways, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So something I started doing the last couple months is writing down just about every prayer request I have for God, or everything I discuss with him in prayer. And of course, prayer is not just a one-way conversation and just rattling off your requests, but it's an intimate time to discuss things and bring things to God that are on your heart and mind. And I think that by writing down all of these things that I bring to my Father, I am not only able to go back and write down from the future, this is how God answered this request, or this is how God responded to me bringing this to him, but also to see all of the difficulties that were going on and all of the joys from different periods of my life, or as I hope to build this list even more through the years. So it creates an accurate picture of the blessings that were going on at the time and the things that were nearly killing me. And to be able to see, no, it was not a perfect time, but God still heard every single thing written on these pages. And so that, I think, is a practical way that you can accurately depict your past as it's building, and also reflect on God's goodness and God's mercy. And I'll just close my answer to that question with 1 Thessalonians 5:18, which says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you."
Yeah.
Gratitude.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yeah, cherishing every moment is so rooted in gratitude. I have a very similar situation and story, I think, to you, Abella, because there was a time in my life where I got sick enough with a case of long COVID. I've shared it, I think, on the podcast before, but it was right before I transferred to Anderson University. I got very, very sick with long COVID, which is a form of COVID that doesn't leave your body after 2 weeks. It sort of stays in there. You're no longer contagious like after 2 weeks, but the effects of the sickness still stay in there, and they don't fully leave until years later down the road. So for me, I was in a situation where I was barely getting any sleep, very sleep deprived, maybe 1 or 2 hours a night, heavy brain fog to where I could barely form coherent sentences and concepts in my mind, and much less convey them through my mouth. And also just random pains all over my body. I think we figured out that it attacked my central nervous system, so very occasionally just there would be random effects throughout my body that we couldn't explain. And in the midst of that, it was like I was living hell on earth. Mm-hmm. It felt like I was never going to get better from it, just because it was so new. It was so unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But in the darkest moment of that, I remember in a hospital, I had actually asked the Lord for help for the first time with it, and he answered. He was incredibly faithful, because it is a living testimony I have that I am able to be here today, when back then I didn't even know if I would make it out alive. And you can take that, like you were saying, you can take that, and you can choose to be ungrateful for what you have today and looking at everything you don't have. Or I can look back at where I was as soon as I feel my heart slipping into the posture of not being grateful, as soon as I feel my mind slipping into the tendency to focus on what I don't have. I can just remember where I was 2 years ago, how sick I was, how awful life was, and realize that I was never guaranteed this. I was never guaranteed this in that moment, and that every single day beyond that is a gift from God, where I'm living the life that I thought that I'd never have. And I can't help but be grateful, and I can't help but cherish that. It's hard, but it is so rejuvenating. It's so life-giving when you realize that and fully embrace it. And being present in every moment just looks like being able to be here and now enjoying the moments God has given you, enjoying the community that he's placed you in. When we're distracted, it pulls us out of it. So often, our most common distraction is our phones. Let's be real here. As soon as we pick that up and start going to social media or looking at what we have to do, we're instantly pulled out of the present. We're instantly pulled out of the reality of the moment that we're in, the blessings that we have. Maybe if we're having lunch with friends, we're pulled out of that and are no longer able to cherish it as much. And I'm not saying that phones are a bad thing, but it's so often that if we spend all of our time on it, we're consuming rather than cherishing. Yeah. Like you were saying, Easton. So, man, that's so good.
And what a blessing, Talon, that you have an example of rescue in your testimony, because there's still people who are very dedicated Christians who don't have that quite yet. Mm-hmm. But that's a really beautiful thing, because you may come across someone someday who has experienced something similar, and you can encourage them with that. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Lord works through us. And I love the verse that says that he works everything for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose.
Amen.
Because he takes everything that we have gone through, whether or not it was his will for our life, because sin ultimately wasn't his will. I fully believe that. But he is still able to work through that. Jesus is able to turn the mess of our lives and make a beautiful masterpiece. Mm-hmm. And so he works through that. He is able to lead us to encourage others who have gone through similar things. And in the same way, he's leading me and y'all to encourage hopefully help y'all listening to this realize that there is so much joy to be found in life. I know that things are hard. I know sometimes life isn't what you thought it would be. And it's so easy to focus on what isn't going right because it's so evident in all of our lives. There's so much in our lives that if we choose to focus on, it's like, yeah, there's so many broken parts. But it's so good to focus on what we do have. Be grateful that we're in a place where we are able to have our nutritional needs met, where we are able to believe in what we do without having the fear of being persecuted by our government, right? These are all blessings that the Lord has given us, and it's so powerful to rejoice in that. Ultimately, the devil doesn't want us to have joy. He doesn't want us to rejoice, because as soon as we lose joy, it's a lot easier for us to fall into temptation. It's a lot easier for us to slide away from the Lord, and that's ultimately the enemy's goal.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you, now, what gives those things value? Like what gives those things the value that we're entitled to cherish them rightly? You know, because let's compare two people. You have a Christian who has a good home, good family, and loves the Lord, and he's the Lord provides for all his needs. You have an unbeliever, same situation. They can both be grateful, but like what makes it different between the two?
Right. I believe they both have the same inherent value, because even those who don't believe in God, they still have all the gifts that God has given them, because if it weren't for God, they would not even have breath in their lungs. I think the difference there is once you realize who gave you the gift, their nature, you're able to enjoy it more, and you're able to see the blessing that it is.
The nature of a gift is the giver.
Yes, the nature of the gift is the giver. For someone who doesn't believe in God, who might be an atheist who has these gifts, it's so much easier for them to say, oh, this is the way things are. Yep, this is life. This just happened all at once, but there's so much in the way that I don't enjoy where my life is. Because almost as soon as we declare there is no God, we're making ourselves the God of our own life. And as soon as we do that, that does not lead anywhere good, because we were never meant to carry that weight, and we never will be able to reach that because we are not God. The difference there, Easton, in that, if you're following along with what I'm saying, is that once you realize that everything is a gift rather than everything is just something we take for granted, you're able to cherish it more, because also the same God who gave it is able to take it away in a moment.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
Bringing Job into that right at the very end. I feel like that was a bit of a heavy hitter to just leave there. Yeah. It is true that sometimes the Lord takes away gifts. Mm-hmm. And I think often he does that if we start to cherish the gift. If we start to cherish the gift more than the giver.
Oh, that's good.
Because so often we will start to cherish and focus on what God gives us rather than God himself and who he is. And it's like we look at him as someone who just grants all our wishes, like a personal genie. And as soon as that happens, that gift becomes an idol. And the Lord tells us that we shall have no other gods before him and that we are not to have idols. So I'm not saying that if he's taken away something in your life that is good, that's definitely the case. It's just sometimes that is the case. And sometimes we need to pray that the Lord will reveal to us what are idols in our life.
Yeah, especially people. It's very easy to worship people or worship in a sense, people who are so important and pivotal in your life. And I think it's easier to convince yourself that a person cannot be an idol in my life, but in fact they can. And especially if those people are given to you and are good things from God, and you just mishandle that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm reading a book by Paul David Tripp called Awe, A-W-E. And his premise of the book really speaks to what we're talking about. It's this idea of we are creatures made to live in awe. We are creatures made to have something that captures our attention. Because in our heads, we can know that God is the greatest thing, and he's the greatest end and goal, the end goal that we can pursue. But there's still other things we have to, deal with. Like we have to get a job so that we can work, so we can feed our kids. We got to sleep and take care of our health so we don't lash out at our friends when they get on our nerves. But a huge premise of his book is that something he establishes is that the way we react reveals what we have placed our awe in, right? So like the Israelites, in a lot of ways, food and water and provisions were their idols. That was what they had their awe in. And it doesn't make sense because there's so much that was right in front of them that they had to behold. There was a pillar of fire that led them by night, a cloud that led them by day. And they continually rebelled. Paul Tripp, he extends this idea throughout all of Scripture, and you could see like in all the ways that people have fallen. David, his awe problem was Bathsheba. Solomon, his awe problem was with his wives. Saul, his awe problem was his kingship. The only person who was able to break that awe problem was Christ, because all those things were pointing to him. He's the only thing that we can place our awe in, and be satisfied.
Yeah, it's so important to be in awe of God and to remember where the gifts come from and to be grateful for it every day, to remind ourselves that every moment that God has given us is from him, and that if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have it. And it's so important to make sure that we are giving him credit for that each and every day and reminding ourselves that he is still everything we need. Even though we have these things and they're good, ultimately we don't need them because Jesus, is everything we need. He meets all our needs.
By no means, don't refuse a gift from God. Yeah. But like you said, it becomes a problem as soon as we place that gift between us and the giver.
And it's also a problem as soon as we give credit to someone else for the gifts that God has given us. You see it all the time with the Israelites. As soon as they move into the promised land and have all of the judges and the kings, time and time again, they start worshiping other idols, worshiping other gods. And one of my friends put it so plainly and simply, and it's just revolutionized the way that I view that whole story. It's like, as soon as we start to worship something else other than God, as soon as we start to give credit to something else other than God for what we have, it's like a friend gives us a gift, and then we go to a different person and say, oh my gosh, thank you for this gift. It's like, as the friend, how would you feel?
Wow.
You'd feel betrayed. You'd feel angry, upset, because the gift that you gave to that person, they are not giving back the thanks that is deserved. It's good for the person who received the gift to give credit back to the person who gave it. And as soon as you don't, it's wrong. It's not right. And the person who gave it is like, well, I'm wronged. And in the same way, that's how God feels as soon as we start worshiping something more than him. It's like we're betraying the gift giver. We're betraying the life giver. And that's, I think, why he is called a jealous God in the scriptures. It's because he does love us, and he wants us to see all of the good things that he has given us. Cherishing every moment. It's so life-giving, but we also have to cherish the moment giver.
Mm-hmm. Cherishing him.
Yes, I love that. Well, I think we are running out of time for this podcast. But before we close, what's one piece of advice or encouragement that you'd like to give the listeners for the week ahead?
I would have to say, once you find and discover this joy from the Lord and are fully able to, or approaching being able to really cherish every moment, to pour that out on other people. Romans 13:10 says, love does no wrong to others. And that is a way that you can point your peers, friends, people you don't even know, your professors, to that point of joy and cherishing the moments when you go out of your way, and let them know that they are loved and that they do have purpose and that they are specifically created in a very meticulous, detailed, purposeful way. So I would encourage you to pour that out and take an action step this week.
Yeah, That's good.
Now, my encouragement would be, I live by the saying, the best is yet to come. Mm-hmm. And that applies to not just the ups, but also the downs. Because ultimately what we have in the present is not what's going to last. This world is temporal. It's passing away. We can see it each and every day, how quickly it's fading. And the things that we try to hold on to, that besides Christ, those things are temporary. And so, like, even in my victories, even in my defeats, I live with the promise that the best is yet to come, when all those things that I once chased after are replaced with this full view of him. And that's what I live with. And I would encourage you to pursue that kind of perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure. The best is yet to come. Love it. Well, anyways, Easton, Abella, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Audacious podcast. This has been amazing.
Yes, sir.
Of course. Thank you so much, Talon.
Thank you.
Of course. And as always, I'm Talon Bolmy, your host of the show, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.